You enjoy making a person look like 2 cents, don't you? Well, get this straight. I don't like being made to look like 2 cents. Especially by somebody who was small change himself not so long ago. You boys ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Just think of what you're doing to that poor little innocent girl.
Oh, but Joan, you don't understand.
2 grown men acting like grown men.
Why, Joan?
On May 10th, 1977, all of Hollywood seemed to pause. One of the most powerful icons of the silver screen quietly left this world. Joan Crawford, the woman who once shook Hollywood and defined what a star looked like for decades, took her final breath at the age of 69. But what left many people shaken was not just her passing. It was the tragic fate of the 4 adopted children she left behind. Stories about that family suddenly resurfaced, fragmented, painful, and haunting enough to ignite fierce public debate. Some felt sympathy. Others were skeptical. But what if these were not rumors, but truths told by the very people who lived inside that family? Truths buried for years. This video will uncover every secret and the darkest chapter in the life of Joan Crawford, a name once deeply loved across America. 1. Joan Crawford, the unhinged icon Joan Crawford, was born on March 23rd, 1904 in San Antonio, Texas, into a poor and unstable family. Her childhood was anything but gentle. Her biological father left when she was too young to even remember him. Her stepfather ran a boarding house and forced her to scrub floors and clean before she even turned 10. She dropped out of school, worked as a waitress, danced in traveling shows, and eventually found her way to New York and then Hollywood. Within just a few years of arriving in Hollywood, Joan Crawford climbed straight to the top of MGM. In the 1930s, Crawford's name stood alongside fellow MGM stars like Norma Shearer and Greta Garbo. She became one of the most enduring names in Hollywood and one of the highest-paid women in America at the time. But life did not give Joan Crawford everything. She had fame, men, and marriages, but she could never have a biological child. So she adopted 4 children, and Hollywood immediately called it a miracle. But for those children, it was not just luck. It was the moment their private lives disappeared. From the moment they entered the Crawford home, they were no longer ordinary children. They became Joan Crawford's children, targets of cameras, tabloids, and endless rumors. And that was the first tragedy. They were swallowed by their mother's fame before they even had the chance to grow up. 2. Christina Crawford, Cinderella 2.0. Christina was adopted in June 1939, when she was not even 2 weeks old. Joan Crawford named her Christina after her own middle name. A child of the Crawford household, one of the most famous homes in Hollywood. Not a home of scarcity, but one filled with lights, beautiful dresses, absolute order, and a mother powerful and wealthy enough to build a life that looked like a dream. When Christina arrived, Crawford was married to her 3rd husband, actor Franco Tone, though that marriage was already beginning to crack. To the public, Christina seemed like a little princess placed at the center of a luxurious world. There was no abandonment, no sense of being treated like an outsider. She had her own room, beautiful clothes, full meals, caregivers, trips, and a famous mother who knew exactly how to make everything look perfect from the outside. And in many ways, Christina truly did live in that comfort. As she grew up, Christina followed her mother into entertainment. She appeared in the Broadway musical Barefoot in the Park, in the film Wild in the Country with Elvis Presley, and in the long-running television series The Secret Storm. In 1968, when Christina faced a medical emergency and underwent unexpected surgery to remove an ovarian tumor, her role in The Secret Storm was left vacant. In a moment that moved many people, Crawford offered to step in and take her daughter's role. "I didn't want them to give the part to someone else," Crawford told the New York Times. Christina later recalled, "They asked me about it the day after my surgery. I wasn't fully conscious yet, but I remember thinking how wonderful it was that she cared about me that much. But that childhood was never complete. Comfort could not erase the feeling of instability. A beautiful house did not mean a peaceful home. Whatever love existed was always tied to pressure, control, and Joan Crawford's unpredictable emotional shifts. For Christina, it was not a childhood of material poverty. It was a childhood where a perfect exterior constantly hid something fractured beneath." In 1978, 1 year after Crawford's death, Christina published Mommy Dearest, a shocking memoir in which she accused herself of having been abused during childhood and described her adoptive mother as an alcoholic, unstable, and emotionally explosive person. If Christina's harsh accusations were true, then her mother's elegant public image was a carefully constructed facade of a cold, cruel, and monstrous woman. Bitter, dark, and razor-sharp, Mommy Dearest aimed to expose Joan as a child abuser, a manipulative liar, and a self-righteous alcoholic. There had been mother-daughter photo shoots, both dressed alike. Lavish birthday parties, Christmases that felt like an entire department store delivered right to the foot of the tree. But according to Christina, she and her brother Christopher, along with the twins Cathy and Cindy, were little more than decorative props. They were not allowed to keep most of their gifts, yet were forced to write countless thank you notes. Many in Hollywood defended Crawford. Her ex-husband, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., told the New York Times in 1988 that the Joan Crawford I read about in Mommy Dearest is not the Joan Crawford I knew. But Christina did not back down. After the book's release, she became an advocate for children of alcoholic parents and victims of abuse. She testified at federal hearings and consulted for Los Angeles County during the restructuring of the family court system. But Christina was not the only one who grew up in that house. And if her story shook Hollywood, Christopher Crawford's story would take a very different turn. 3. Christopher Crawford, a toxic bond. Christopher was born in 1943 and was adopted shortly after by Crawford and Terry. When Crawford and Terry divorced in 1946, she changed her son's name from Philip Terry Jr. to Christopher Crawford. He never publicly spoke about his relationship with his mother, but Christina often said the two siblings relied on each other for strength. "We made a fatal mistake. We started growing up. We started becoming people," she wrote in Mommy Dearest. "We were no longer perfectly controlled dolls, ready for the camera. Poor mother became furious when she realized something was wrong in her mannequin world." In 1958, at just 15 years old, Christopher made headlines after using a pellet gun to shoot out streetlights and school windows on Long Island. At the time, He was living with child psychiatrist Earl Loomis. Very little is known about Christopher's personal life. He served in the U.S. military and was stationed in Vietnam at the age of 25. He lived a very private life, but Christina said in 1919 that he always supported her book and her decision to speak out against what they claimed was their mother's abusive behavior. In the book, Not the Girl Next Door, Crawford's longtime friend, John Springer, revealed that after Christopher was discharged from the military, he visited Crawford with his wife and children, but she refused to let him in. In the book, Springer recalled Crawford saying, "What I remember most is when Christopher, as a teenager, spat in my face. He said, 'I hate you.' That's hard to forget. I can't." In Crawford's will, she stated that she intentionally disinherited both Christopher and Christina for reasons which are well known to them. But after the actress died in 1977, the two siblings contested the will and ultimately split $55,000. But if Christopher darkened the picture even further, then when it came to Cathy Crawford, the story began to shift in a more hopeful direction. Cathy Crawford, a childhood unlike any other Cathy Crawford, was one of a set of fraternal twins, along with Cindy, born on January 13th, 1947 in Tennessee. Just a few days later, Joan Crawford adopted both girls from the Tennessee Children's Home Society, an organization later exposed for its involvement in illegal adoption activities, leading to a major investigation and statewide child welfare reforms in 1951. According to Vanity Fair, the adoption had been arranged before the twins were even born, and their birth mother died less than a week after giving birth. When Cathy and Cindy entered that home, Joan Crawford was already in her early 40s, had been raising Christina and Christopher for 8 years, had already gone through the early collisions of motherhood, and was standing on a much more stable career foundation than before. She was no longer the woman struggling to survive inside the Hollywood system the way she had during her MGM years. She had money, status, the family machine already in place, and most importantly, experience. The twins did not step into a journey starting from zero. They stepped into a house that already had structure, already had its own rhythm, and already had clear rules. And because of that, their experience was not like what their two older siblings had gone through. Crawford was still Crawford, still organizing her children's lives the way she always did. She arranged private bedrooms, set schedules, closely followed school activities, and created holidays that Cathy would later remember as genuinely warm moments, not performances for the press. She was present in her children's lives. She had high expectations. But according to Cathy, she was a mother who loved her children in a way they could feel. As an adult, Cathy married Navy sailor Jerome Lalonde in 1968 in a dress she designed and made herself. She had 2 children, Carla and Casey. That marriage ended after many years, and she later reconnected with her biological family in Tennessee. But what made Cathy such a distinctive figure in this story was not her personal life. It was the way she saw her mother. When speaking about Mommy Dearest, Cathy flatly rejected all of it. She told Vanity Fair that they lived in the same house as Christina, but not in the same reality. For Cathy and Cindy, this was a completely different mother. A strict but good mother, loving and nothing like the person described in the book. Christina later pushed back, saying the age gap meant Cathy could not understand what she and Christopher had gone through, because Cathy was too young, not even born yet when many of those things happened. That conflict did not stop at words. Cathy once sued Christina for defamation after she said their mother had lied about the twins being twins. The case ended in settlement, and Cathy won. Cathy's story, then, is not a tragedy in the way the public expects. It is a paradox. The same mother in the same house, but completely opposite memories. In 2020, Cathy died at the age of 72 from lung cancer, carrying with her a different version of Joan Crawford that not everyone was willing to believe. Cindy Crawford. Along with Cathy, Cindy was born on January 13th, 1947. Right after the film Mommy Dearest came out, Cindy told McCall's magazine, "The worst punishment I ever got was having to eat cold dinner for breakfast. Other than that, I never saw my mother drunk." In A&E's documentary, Always the Star, Cindy also said, "My mother was very strict. She wanted us to grow up self-reliant. Part of that strictness included chores, including washing dishes from the age of 4 or 5, she said. She was not the person my sister Christina said she was," Cindy said. "She was very thoughtful and loving." Beyond being a strict mother in her own way, Joan Crawford in real life was also a true force in Hollywood. A star with a voice and standing, and because of that, she was deeply respected and admired by many people in the industry. Joan Crawford was a Hollywood icon. Joan Crawford built a brilliant film career, marked by striking performances in movies like Grand Hotel, Mildred Pierce, Johnny Guitar, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. She was not only an outstanding actress, but also a model of ambition, discipline, and rare endurance in the business. Joan's film career paved the way for later actresses, affirming the weight women could carry on screen in complex, powerful, and commanding roles. The films she appeared in each had their own distinct appeal and left a deep mark on Hollywood history. A fashion and lifestyle icon, Joan Crawford was not only an icon on screen, but also a model of lifestyle and fashion. She was one of the early Hollywood stars to use her appearance and personal presence to create a signature identity. At the height of her glory years, Joan's image was always tied to glamorous evening gowns, fur coats, sharp shoulder pads, and an almost absolute level of polish, from her roles on screen to her appearances in real life. She became a defining face of the successful, glamorous, but powerful woman that classic Hollywood especially loved. She also became a symbol of self-invention, of constantly refining her image and always appearing with a kind of confidence that almost left no room for error. Whenever Joan appeared at events or in promotional photos, she gave off a sense of elegance, precision, and total control, helping shape the way the public viewed famous women during old Hollywood. Her style was not just about outside glamour, but about the blend of ambition, discipline, and a strong awareness of self-worth. And that was exactly what helped Joan Crawford become a model of female power for many decades. Cultural and social influence through the book My Way of Life. Joan Crawford's book My Way of Life, published in 1971, became a notable part of her cultural legacy. In it, she not only shared parts of her rise, but also laid out an entire philosophy of life centered on discipline, appearance, work, the home, and the way a woman should organize her life. The book was not a dramatic tell-all memoir like many autobiographies that came later, but more like a guide to living written by a star who had turned her own life into a self-made construction. Through it, Joan Crawford offered views on self-control, self-reinvention, and the will to rise, influencing many readers who admired the image of a strong, disciplined woman who refused to be defeated by circumstance. She was not just a star people watched on screen, but also a figure from whom others learned how to stand tall, dress well, work seriously, and live as if their life deserved respect. It was that blend of glamour, discipline, and the desire to remake herself that helped Joan Crawford hold on to cultural appeal long after her peak years had passed. Her final years, or cruel punishment. After the peak of Mildred Pierce, where she won her only Oscar and re-established her standing after being labeled washed up, Joan kept working. She landed more notable roles, more films respected by critics. But one truth started becoming painfully clear. The commercial spotlight was no longer coming back the way it once had. Hollywood, which had never been gentle with women, especially older women, began pushing her aside in a very familiar way. Roles became fewer. Her power in the industry slowly faded, and what had once been the center of the game began turning into its outer edge. Against that backdrop, her marriage to Alfred Steele in 1955 appeared like another door opening. Steele was not from Hollywood. He was a top executive at Pepsi-Cola. And by stepping into that marriage, Joan did not just become the wife of a powerful man. She also stepped into an entirely new role, a corporate representative. She attended events, traveled for business, appeared at meetings, promoted the brand with the same professionalism and control she had once brought to the screen. And more importantly, she did it very well. At a time when Hollywood was starting to turn its back on her, Pepsi gave her something she needed: structure, a schedule, a position, the feeling that she was still useful, still visible. But that feeling did not last long. In 1959, Alfred Steele died of a heart attack. And that blow hit on two levels at once. One level was personal loss. A husband she truly depended on was gone. The other level was much colder: finances. That marriage did not leave Joan with the security she had imagined. Expenses, debts, a lifestyle already built around a high standard, all of it came crashing down on her. She was forced to sell her New York house, forced to scale back, forced to strain to preserve the image of a star, while the foundation underneath was no longer as solid as before. For someone used to controlling everything, this was not just financial pressure, this was loss of control. Then in 1962, Joan returned to the screen with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a film that quickly became a major commercial and critical success. This was a real comeback, another clear reminder that she could still pull audiences back in. But along with that success came something else familiar: conflict. This time it was with Bette Davis. Two women, two legends. Two egos that would never back down, placed inside the same frame. And the result was not harmony, but a work environment full of tension, competition, and toxicity. Joan was still Joan. She was still calculating, still icy sharp. still unwilling to leave the stage in silence, even if the price was that the relationships around her grew more fractured by the year. In the years that followed, the circle around her began shrinking more clearly. Pepsi, the place that had once given her a sense of stability, gradually pushed her out, citing age and health as the reason. After nearly 2 decades of connection, the separation was not loud, but it was enough to leave a major void. Joan moved into a life centered mostly around her Fifth Avenue apartment. No more packed schedules, no more constant lights. Her friends, with time, became fewer. Some died, some drifted away, and some simply were no longer part of the circle she had once controlled. Her health also began to decline, but instead of turning to modern medicine, Joan chose Christian Science, a religious belief system that does not encourage conventional medical treatment. She refused many treatments others might have chosen, and that made her decline unfold in silence, with very little intervention. By 1977, Joan Crawford died in her apartment. The tip of the iceberg: how much love is enough? Joan Crawford passed away, but her family's story only truly began from that point. What remained was no longer one shared home, but 4 memories splitting off in 4 different directions. And no one processed the past the same way. That is what makes Joan's legacy so haunting. Not because people do not know who to believe, but because when you place all 4 children side by side, you are forced to accept that the same mother can still create 4 completely different emotional worlds. Christina is the one who chose to speak. She did not try to soften anything to please anyone. She wrote, "Mommy Dearest," and turned her personal experience into a public accusation. For Christina, that story was not just about a daughter exposing her famous mother. It was also her way of reclaiming the right to define her own childhood. In many people's eyes, it was a betrayal, but in Christina's eyes, it was survival. She was not only talking about her own wounds. She pushed the story to a broader level, connecting it to child abuse, to absolute power within a family, to the way fame and money can shield behaviors that, in an ordinary home, might have been named much earlier. That is why Christina did not just become a storyteller. She became a controversial symbol of refusing to stay silent. Christopher was different. He did not deny the pain, but he also did not turn it into a blazing indictment the way his sister did. That is what makes him the most difficult to read among the 4 siblings. What is known about Christopher suggests he did not have a peaceful childhood either. He was estranged from his mother, was cut out of the will, and clearly did not grow up feeling fully loved. But he did not go to extremes. He held on to complexity. He allowed 2 things to exist at the same time. There was hurt, and there was still feeling. There was resentment, but not a desire to spend the rest of his life burning inside it. He seemed to value peace over performance, to value quiet over winning an argument that could never truly end. Cathy and Cindy took a path that almost completely went in the opposite direction. These twin daughters did not just defend their mother once and move on. They remained consistent for decades. They did not speak like people trying to protect the image of a deceased star. They spoke like people recalling their own real memories. In those memories, Joan Crawford was a strict mother, demanding, structured, but also present. Caring, organizing her children's lives, and loving them in a way they could feel. For Cathy and Cindy, the version of their mother and mommy dearest did not match the person they lived with. What makes this part more painful is that they never seem to be pretending. They defend Joan steadily, without apology, without stepping back, as if what they are protecting is not their mother's reputation, but the truth of their own lives. And that is what remains when all 4 children are placed side by side. Not a final verdict on Joan Crawford. Not a clean answer that she was either a monster or a victim of distortion. What remains is very human evidence that one mother can be experienced in completely different ways by children who grew up under the same roof. The eldest daughter may remember fear. The son may remember pain but refuse to live and die by it. The 2 younger daughters may remember presence, discipline, and even love. None of them necessarily has to be lying for all of that to be true at the same time. That is also why Joan Crawford's story has never truly ended. Because the legacy she left behind is not just films, fame, or Hollywood battles. That legacy is also 4 children, 4 ways of remembering, 4 ways of continuing life after a childhood that was not the same, even under the same roof. Christina chose to speak. Christopher chose to hold on to complexity. Cathy and Cindy chose to defend. All 4 choices make sense when seen from the position of someone who lived through it. And maybe that is the most uncomfortable truth of all. In a family, love does not always erase damage, but damage does not automatically erase love either. If you have stayed with this story to the end, you have probably realized this is not just about Joan Crawford, but about how every family carries hidden corners that outsiders can never fully see. If you found this meaningful, take a second to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next stories. Those small actions truly help this channel continue exploring topics many people still hesitate to talk about. And I would really like to hear from you. Who do you think is closer to the truth? Christina, Christopher, or Cathy and Cindy? Or is the truth somewhere in between? Leave your comment below because it is those different perspectives that keep this story alive. Also, if there is a famous family you want me to explore next, share it in the comments as well. It could be a Hollywood legend, a music icon, or any family story you feel still has a lot left untold. The next video might just be your suggestion.
This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Thoughtfully compiled from public archives, historical records, and classic articles. While we strive for accuracy and balanced storytelling, some details from Hollywood's golden age remain unconfirmed and should be treated as speculative. We encourage viewers to draw their own independent conclusions. If this journey through Hollywood's shadows resonated with you, please leave a gentle like and subscribe with the bell icon so you never miss our next chapter. To continue uncovering the forgotten tragedies of the Golden Age, simply select the video on your screen right now. Thank you for keeping their memories alive.